The ninth elder did not answer to us. A mouthful of blood puffed out of his mouth. I hastily reached out and hugged my senior sister to me, a flash of panic in my expression. What has she been through? Xiaoruo-chan? A drop of cold sweat appeared on the corner of her forehead. I had to remind my good disciple not to crow. Senior sister, she's still breathing. Where are the pills I gave you earlier? The good apprentice quickly rummaged through her hands to find the great restorative pill. Her slender fingers pinched the small pill and handed it over. I pinched the small pill in my hand. Then I slowly put my two fingers together and delivered it to my senior sister's mouth with great ease. But she seems to be unable to swallow it all. Have to smooth out the breath to take the medicine. Xiaoruo-chan is a bit puzzled. Then the ninth uncle is not swallowed. I held ninth senior sister in a death grip. After all, she wouldn't die so easily, and I wouldn't allow that to happen while I was here. Apparently my good disciple misunderstood me, but the most important thing right now was to save my sister. So I reminded my disciple to hurry up and hide away from me. Immediately after that, I pushed my hands inwards in a smooth motion. My senior sister's body shook violently with the movement, only to see a mouthful of blood spitting out of her mouth. I didn't think that at such a critical moment, my good disciple would be so dumbfounded that it took a few moments before he could get the pill into his sister's mouth. I looked towards my senior sister, who was lying peacefully on the ground, but inwardly I couldn't help but sigh. The rest could only depend on her destiny. Shen Wulong suddenly opened his eyes slowly, and the first thing he saw was the handsome face of his fifth senior brother. Her ears were haunted by the odd epithet, and it was only then that it occurred to her that it might be for herself. And then wouldn't she still be alive? Only she sat her day up with a scuff. Her little white paws grasped my robe and whispered to me to run away. But as the most handsome fifth elder in the world, of course I couldn't do the act of dumping my sister. But there was suddenly someone in front of me who blocked the way. This masked man is still talking to himself. Cloutzy Sword Immortal is really extraordinary. You'd even managed to escape here with a sword set scumbag by your side. I gazed at him unkindly. Are you the one who hurt my senior sister? But the masked man lightly tskd twice in disdain. Another Sword Clan elder. The little sister in my arms didn't open her eyes, but I won't allow the masked man's instigation either. So you're the one who hurt my sister? The masked man said, yes, so what? Your senior sister, although not useful, at least into the middle stage of refining the virtual. You a small god of transformation. Still want to take revenge, do not? I was instantly an angry flip. Cultivating immortality is an extremely boring thing. The most important thing is not to have high strength, but not to meddle in other people's business. But the stupid masked man in front of me had certainly stepped on all my minefields, and he was even going to be the first to attack. I first called out the shield to resist. Immortal cultivators must be calm and collected. Those who break the rules of the immortal cultivation world, we call him a waste of time. But those who don't know how to value their nearest and dearest, those of the same clan, are not even trash. Apparently the masked man immediately flew forward and used his second move, a sword of ice and sky, with 3 feet of cold coming straight at me. All around me, energy surged wildly. A nameless aura shot up into the sky. Since I took in my disciples, I've never made a move. Suddenly I slowly touched my own longsword, my large hand tightening suddenly with anger, and pulled it out inch by inch. Then a cold aura flashed in my eyes, and the sword chants within the longsword aroused my killing intent. Today I want to be dominant for once. So I quickly swung my longsword, and the energy above me gradually came together, and a cold wind whistled all around me. But my handsome speech did not stop there. But the enemy on the other side shouted that it was too noisy, and the great hand twisted to mobilize energy. However, I didn't stop my skills. The rapidly flying sword light formed a circle and rushed straight towards the masked man's face. The masked man was instantly attacked by the huge sword light, and his body dissipated as if he had exploded. Only a crunching sound was heard, and a token fell to the ground in response. Xiaoruo-chan suddenly inwardly committed nymphomania, but Shen Wulong kept thinking quietly. Surprisingly, it's the ultimate sword one. She guessed that I must have hidden my cultivation. At this time, the broadcast within the system quickly rang out. The disciple had cultivated the first stance of the sword code, thus unleashing a sword stance that was 100 times more effective. My good disciple quietly came up to the front and inadvertently whispered, where the ninth master was being chased and killed. Shen Wulong's cheeks were slightly red. When he passed by this place just now, he discovered the sword sect disciples being killed by 2 masked men. When I heard that, my tiger's body shook. Why did you kill my sword sect disciples? She saw the sword sect disciple trapped within the black spell formation, and then the disciples' sword bones were drawn out, almost all of them by the black S. Xiaoruo-chan snapped to mind her own previous life, not expecting those disciples to suffer its pain as well. I looked towards my apprentice, with some confusion and couldn't help but ask rhetorically, have you seen it before, and why did you react so dramatically? Xiao Ruochang waved her hand in a hurry. She said it was just the technique that was vicious. I nodded my head thoughtfully. Tearing down a person's sword bone is really sinister. I wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes. My sister must have been secretly planned. Otherwise it wouldn't be like this. But something did shock me. The masked man had an accomplice. Did the two of them work together? As soon as I picked up my injured little sister, I walked toward the front with a grim expression on my face, not forgetting to remind my good disciple to walk quickly. Xiao Ruochang, however, kept shouting at the back, master, don't we look for the cliffs anymore? I immediately retorted back in a loud and unhappy voice, don't get sidetracked. Senior sister can't have any more accidents. But Shan Wulong's face was flushed and her eyes were slightly narrowed. She felt that her senior brother's embrace was so comfortable, and it wasn't as if this kind of accident couldn't come every day. Until night falls quietly, I finally let out a long breath, while my good disciple quietly pokes around and says to burn a pot of tea for Ninth Master, only to see her turn back suddenly in the night, gently shaking the peach blossom tea back in her hand. I didn't see my good disciple's evil smile, and was still pondering what was to come, not caring at all if there were any peach blossoms in the sword sect. Xiao Ruochang bared her teeth viciously. The Ninth Master was very upset with her master, and was still stirring up trouble in her place. I immediately turned back to my good disciple. If you want to see it, there's an open space on the sword peak, so I can plant a peach grove for you. I was still watching my good apprentice boil the water when the voice of my senior sister rang in my ears, and I suddenly turned back with a little puzzlement. It so happened that Xiao Ruochang had already brewed the tea, and she was going to bring it to the Ninth Master. I didn't expect the little hands to caress my cheeks and break my head in the process. Little sister actually held my face in my good disciple's line of sight and came forward, kissing me gently on the lips. It was only then that Xiao Ruochang felt a bolt from the blue, as if she had been struck by something in her heart, and the tea in her hand spilled down. I only heard a bang. The teacup fell down and crumbled into pieces, but my sister jumped on me bravely. I had to push my little sister away hastily, and then I looked at my good disciple who was trying to escape, and for a moment I didn't know how to. Xiao Ruochang's aggression welled up inside her. She hated her master for killing her. Now I'm kissing another woman. What's it got to do with her? But she still felt more aggrieved than ever, and the little teardrops in the corners of her eyes seemed to be falling. She didn't even notice that she had reached the edge of the cliff, and was still thinking about the image of Ninth Uncle kissing her. Xiao Ruochang said she wouldn't care, but her feet had long since stepped out of the air, and she slowly came back to her senses from the moment she dropped down. She literally fell off the highest cliff, and despite her cries, no one seemed to come to her rescue, so she quickly grabbed the corner of cliff's coat, her little hands shaking a little with panic. Her face had long been drenched in tears, as if she was fighting for herself. Why should she be allowed to kiss her master's father? I came in a hurry and hastily shouted to my defeated disciple not to let go of my hand. I'll come and save you right away, only to see that Xiao Ruochang favored 100 catty backbone. She immediately loosened her hand to show that she would not listen to them until the moment she fell off the cliff. She didn't feel the dying of her life. She had only built her foundation and still couldn't fly. I had to fly down with her and catch her as she hit the ground. But I wasn't going to let my pupil off the hook so easily, and after they both landed on the ground, I slapped her viciously on her little arse. I told you not to let go. The loser apprenticed the smell of vinegar, and it's already started since Merchant, and it's going to get worse at this rate. I stood up, not in charge of her, for the teacher and your Ninth Uncle pro-warm, but also distracted to care about what you do, how not to fall. I didn't finish what I said after that, because I seemed to have discovered something. She had just fallen off the cliff. If she hadn't made a move, would she have found the chance to find the kung fu inside the damn monkey's stomach? I snapped my head up to my apprentice, bright stars flashing in my eyes. I hurriedly walked over and grabbed her shoulders, constantly pouting and swaying from side to side. Disciple, do you want to jump off the cliff again? But she broke away from my big, warm hand and took 2 quick steps forward, before shouting at me that she didn't want to. My gentleman's hand is always in front of me. I have not harmed you. How can a master harm his pupil? Afterwards, I immediately stretched out my 3 fingers and swore to God, I am the one who loves my pupil the most. But I've taken you on as a disciple for so long, but I've never talked to you about what you want to do after cultivating immortality. Xiao Ruochang raised her head and looked at the sky. For a moment her consciousness gradually returned. The apprentice cultivator wants to take revenge. I rubbed my chin thoughtfully, and suddenly held out my palm to my good pupil. Come on, let's give a high five. Though I'm not a high practitioner, I'm always concerned about gains and losses, and I don't care about the feelings of the people around me. But I want to try and cover up this lingering hatred in your heart. How about it? Are you interested? Xiao Ruochang's gaze was slightly tangled, as if she was doubting my truth or falsehood about this matter, but she still put her small hand up. Will master never betray Qing'er? I instantly just nodded sharply. Only just cried the face of the person at this time, but said that she did not want to be in revenge. She cultivated a moral to protect the people she wanted to protect. I saw that things were going in the expected direction, so I looked at my little disciple with a gentle gaze. So can we jump off the cliff now? Xiao Ruochang instantly pondered for a moment, then said that jumping off a cliff should also work. Her figure suddenly enlarged in front of me, and then word by word. But you have to take ninth master with you. Shen Wulong looked down at the deep, bottomless, unrepentant cliffs. Are you sure you came up from here? I can't help but ask rhetorically what's wrong with it. She stated that this was the unrepentant cliff, close to the imperial city of the ancient kingdom of Dongfeng, which was rumored to be one of the 8 mysterious places. Shen Wulong immediately kept sighing with emotion. It was worthy of being the unrepentant cliff. It even made her spiritual energy not work well. So I took one in one hand. No more delay. Let's die early. Jump early and be relieved. Immediately after that, only a loud poof could be heard, and the 3 of them just jumped down. The 2 little beauties were the first to break out of the water, and the water in the lake immediately stained their bodies, easily outlining their charming curves. I lifted my feet and walked to the bank above me, which made me look back at the duo. I told you jumping off the cliff wouldn't be a problem. But Shen Wulong was a bit angry. That was her sarong carp. Really shameless. Just got it and put it on. Seducing who? I hastily covered my eyes and said that I saw nothing. It was so dark. How could I possibly see anything white? Only to see Shen Wulong waving his big hand. He refreshed all her clothes and skirts. Only inwardly he was incredibly twisted, shouting Xiao Ruochang's little demon. I wasn't aware of the duo's state of mind. I was just pointing to the 2 small skeletons in front of me. How symmetrically they were placed. There was bound to be an opportunity here. But Xiao Ruochang looked at the 9th master opposite her. Why was she just staring at her own there? So she was going to ask about something herself. And of course, the 9th elder wouldn't tell the truth. Only that he was curious about her. I squatted down to survey an immoral plant that blooms once every 20 years and can cloud the heavens. But we can't use it now in our realm. I scratched my head a little helplessly. This opportunity, how to pull the crotch so? Is it pulling back and waiting for 800 years later to use it again? But now first we have to look for something else. There should be another opportunity. At that moment there was a roar from the distance, with a hint of strange energy in the sound, which scared the girls into hiding behind me. A claw appeared first, and the ground shook as it did so. I didn't realize that the one who came was a big demon, staring intently at the 3 people in front of them, with the air of breaking them into pieces. Where there is a spirit bead, there is a spirit object. This great demon's target is the fairy fate grass. As long as we don't act rashly, there shouldn't be any problems. Obviously the great demon didn't care what they thought, violently opening its bloody mouth and letting out a roar with its mouth open. In such a situation, where the strength has almost no chance of winning, the 9th sister carries the sword to block the fluctuation for us. And this great demon at least has the strength of refining. I had to remind my sister to collect her breath. If she doesn't feel threatened, it won't do anything to us. At that moment the fairy fringe suddenly blossomed, with rainbow ripples lingering around the flowers. I looked at this small broken flower, cannot help but curse angrily. Early not open, plain not open, but now open. This time also how to run. Only behind the flickering light of this flower, countless eyes glittering with white light appeared. This scene caused the crowd to exclaim that there was a beast hide at the bottom of this cliff. I took out my little treasure with confidence. Good thing I prepared this demon-repelling incense. Even if the tide of beasts was raging, they go round us. That demon is only a peak void refiner, and after fighting with countless beasts, we'll fish in troubled waters, and the fairy's fate grass will be ours. Seeing that this great demon's power was not weakened at all, there was an even more powerful roar. The tiger's might that belonged only to the king of the animals. Then it quickly stretched out its sharp claws, and its small eyes exploded with such impact, until a burst of smoke drifted away and blew away. Xiao Ruochang only then found her voice. The power of that great demon's roar was as terrifying as it was. Let's take advantage of the fact that the big demon is fighting monsters and won't notice us. So let's quickly and quietly take the fairy fate herb. The great demon's claws soon touched the fairy edge grass, and it revealed a confident smile. It had finally protected itself. But before its claws could reach it, it saw 3 little humans below, frantically going over to pick the immortal grasses. The anger in its body could not be dissipated for a long time, and this moment even made it inspire its own super evolution. The might of the tiger bone. I quickly grabbed the roots of the fairy fringe grass. Behind me, the defeated little apprentice was a bit puzzled. What a big drop of water. Why is it still slimy? It was then that I felt a twinge of ill feeling, and very calmly raised my eyes to look at the. Sure enough, it was the great demon that rushed over, with long thorns sprouting from its body and fire seemingly coming out of its eyeballs. I stood at the bottom and shouted at the top of my voice that it was all a misunderstanding, and that you don't remember the little man's faults. So let's go our separate ways. Obviously, the great demon didn't believe in the humans' bullshit, and directly reached out with a palm, and a thick tiger's roar came towards them. A trail of blood fell from the corner of my mouth. This tiger is crazy. Seeing humans don't want to die. Is this the chance of a defeated apprentice? I watched the tiger's big paw quickly slapping down. My heart kept shouting badly. My hallowed sword sect fifth elder was turned into the mud under the tiger's paw and died. I didn't realize that there would be a brave man in times of danger. Sister suddenly raised her sword and blocked the blow from me, but the disparity in their strength was too great, and she knew she couldn't withstand it for long, so she turned back and shouted for us to go. This great demon was like swatting a fly, flinging the human out with a slap, and an angry breath was actually spewing out of his nostrils. I looked at my senior sister who was falling above me, and then I looked at my junior apprentice, who was collapsing on one side. I had to help my defeated apprentice up first, before looking up at the situation above me at this point in time. I then flew off with my little apprentice on my back, but inside I couldn't stop being dismayed. What kind of joke is this stupid woman playing? Just see my big hand out easily grab the little sister. Sister that is a big demon of the harmonious way. How do you dare to resist with it? I didn't expect this stupid woman to say get even. I pulled the corner of my mouth helplessly. Why are you so bitter? Shen Wulong weakly inquired out loud. You said that after going back to the Not Sword Peak, for me to plant full of peach blossom still counts. I panicked and waved my arms up. These are my living ancestors. What a time to make a flag. I'll keep my word. Why are you defending me from this sword? Let's see if I can kill this tiger demon with my sword. So I laid them flat on the ground, and both women were in a coma. In order to release this anger in my body, the longsword at my side had already begun to growl, and the tiger demon raised its sharp claws and flew to pounce. The moment I pulled back my longsword, today I'm going to die. I'm going to take a piece of flesh out of your body. All I got in response was a roar from the tiger demon. But at this moment, I didn't care and hurriedly tried to wake up the Qingping sword in my hand. I only heard a snapping sound. I was pressed down hard by the tiger demon's big paw, but my sword one stance had already been sent out. Now it was just a moment for the big tiger demon to relax, as it looked down at its paws, seemingly having already thought of a way to celebrate. But the tip of a long sword pierced through its thick claws. The trail of blood had a tendency to spread, and my longsword moved upwards with the movement of the step. The tiger demon ate the pain immediately. Another claw. I was not on guard for a moment, but was actually swung out by its madness. I was slammed into the opposite stone wall, but the tiger showed a hint of shock, staring at his paw with his mouth wide open. I fought to use my own longsword as a support, finally not letting my body fall down. However, this Qingping sword in my hand can actually injure a great demon of the harmonious style, so it seems as if the strength is not weak either. I then looked up at the tiger demon above me, and inwardly I was in a state of despair. Having drained all my aura with this move, I was already prepared to be shot to death, but I didn't expect another voice to come from behind me. Sinful animal, don't hurt me! The tiger demon seemed to have forgotten to roar at this point, and looked at his big paw first in horror, and it was actually frowning very quickly. The long-haired woman didn't seem to feel threatened. Her figure followed her like a shadow, and soon she flew above the tiger demon. Her tone did not carry the slightest trace of emotion. Her cool lips were one and the other. Innocent of killing, death. I saw that the big tiger demon, who was unbeatable just now, wanted to play pitiful in front of a woman, and it waved its claws and whimpered innocently. The woman was only embarrassed for a moment, and the moment she saw it flee, she then snapped back to her. She quickly stretched out her hands, and countless energy fluctuations gathered above her, and the branches of the tree began to move without wind. A huge phoenix roar came, causing the great tiger demon to have no room for confrontation at all, and could only be painfully forced to accept that. She waited for her to fall slowly to the ground, before a powerful explosion stirred up behind her, a boom that took no dust or smoke with it. I was then suddenly relieved. This woman really appeared at a stuck point. Could it be that this is the apprentice opportunity? But before I could be happy, the woman's sword came straight at me. Her hair fluttered naturally in the wind, and her whole body was so powerful that people didn't dare to look at her directly. I weakly stretched out my finger to show her that Fairy had saved our lives. Just take the fairy's fake grass. Dark clouds appeared at nightfall, and gradually covered the entire moon. The ground was actually slightly cozy, with meat from a tiger's claw roasting on a wooden rack. The long-haired woman was sitting right in front of the fairy French grass, but her tone was plainly puzzled. She was wondering how I had injured the tiger demon. I'm Su Bei, the fifth elder of the sword sect. Thank you for saving my life. I don't dare to ask her name. A small bottle suddenly appeared in the woman's hand, and her words didn't stop there, indicating her identity as a casual cultivator. She then handed the bottle of medicine to me, but I don't believe her bullshit. Can a casual cultivator cultivate to a palm to kill a big tiger demon? I reached out to take the medicine bottle and said thank you. I don't know how I hurt that big demon. Maybe I'm just hardworking. It seems that even these words are not believed by women. Is the ultimate sword one so powerful? In fact, the fairy does not have to hide her identity. The world is only a handful of transitions. The woman this came to interest. Let me guess her identity. There are only a few robberies in the world, but almost all of them are old men, and I'm afraid that only the one from the Holy Land is as graceful and elegant as the fairy. The woman stated that she had been taken for a key smoke, but did not deny it, and there was no harm in putting on a bit of a costume today. I don't know her real identity, but this is the Holy Maiden, who has the qualification to command the 10,000 clans. If I embrace this big leg, won't it be beautiful in the future? So I handed over the roasted meat. Soft fairy long Su's handiwork. This Hado tiger cloth taste is bound to be not bad. I'm sure I'm not wrong. She can't even look at the meat. Who else can? At that moment a woman coughed softly from behind me, and I couldn't help but look over with some confusion. So is the ninth sister, who's not in good shape. She looks like she's going to collapse at any moment. Does Fairy Nan have a solution to her sister's injuries? She was being chased by someone earlier, and her aura is still blocking her aura. The woman really knew that this was a bane, and I then looked up at her eagerly. Could there be a way to break it? The residue in the body is not much, and can be dissipated in time, but it takes quite a long time, and if you want to seek the method of cracking, you need to go to the Southwind Ancient Kingdom. By now it was already light outside, and the sun in the sky showed a few wheels of light. I don't understand why Fairy Nan waited until now to pick this long ago when the grass had already matured, but Fairy Nan's careful sniffing of the roses is really not comparable to mine. Nanji said that you and I met by bottled water, and she counts me as a chatty person. Since this is the case, she will send me a creation. I frowned a little at the words, and my mind undoubtedly became empty. Life and death have their own destiny. Wealth and riches are in heaven. Mr. Su has long looked down on the matter of seeking immortality. If Fairy Nan really has such an intention, she may as well. Nanji helplessly skimmed the corners of her mouth. This Su Bei would really call people inscrutable. Even so light and breezy, she seemed to be seeking me out a bit more, and I was already a bit impatient inside. It was a fat way for me. My pupil has great talent, but he's with such a lousy master. Su wanted her to go farther, at least not as far as I did. She should see more, see a wider sky. So Nanji walked over to my disciple and quickly worked the energy to impart it to her. The sword code of the sword sect was divided into two halves, and what the sword sect stored today was immortal Dao sword chi, while the other half was King Dao sword chi, with a more prevalent killing. Nanji's techniques were very skillful, even far surpassing all the clans, and the heart law she passed on to her disciple was excellent, only to see that within her spiritual world, the first style of the King's Dao sword suddenly appeared. Nanji has already given it a shiny name. As the saying goes, the word is like a person. Of course the name is called Broken Mountain River. My system started bombarding me all of a sudden. The host's great disciple has successfully comprehended the Broken Mountain and River. The system randomly carries out 8,848 times feedback. I purposely avoided their spells, and it from them with a constant inner glee. System prompts quietly appeared. The host had successfully comprehended the first style of the King's Dao sword code, and soon reached the 7th style, sword whistling rainbow. I was excited to have a dance, but the apprentice behind me appeared to be waking up. I couldn't help but look back because of a soft voice, only to see the good disciple actually lying on the ground, and praising the master for not being unimpressive, and the master for being the greatest master in the whole world. I didn't realize she'd heard it all, but I'm glad you understand. Nanji took out the hands of the harmonious demon Dan, words actually with a trace of satisfaction. This honorable father will hand this over to you. Is also considered a witness? I quickly waved my hand to indicate my refusal. I have already received a great favor from the fairy, but Nanji simply does not allow others to refuse. She said she owed the sword sect a favor, so she'd pay it back, and I dared to take it. After all, the elixir made from this demonic elixir can cure my senior sister's injuries, so I'll be as respectful as I can be. Nanji stated that she had completed her meritorious work, and it was now time to go back. Even my defeated disciple is praising it. The Holy Virgin of the Holy Land certainly can't be a bad person. I smiled very pleasantly. Her old man wanted to eat the capital's dim sum. Maybe this is why she came here. Xiao Ruocheng held the great demonic Dan in her hand. I was easily holding the injured little sister. This time I can go back to the sword sect. Right. I was satisfied to walk slowly forward, gaining countless experience points and a sweet little apprentice. I couldn't stop the little excitement inside me, so much so that I was even walking a little bit when my little apprentice suddenly called out to me again in a soft voice, only to see her hugging the demonic pills that were even bigger than her face. Her little face surprisingly turned red, stating that she just wanted to call out to me. But I don't really care about the name, so if you want to call me that, then you can call me that. There are still more opportunities ahead of us. A hilarious sound rang out from outside the clan's gate, and the two old men were constantly laughing with laughter. The fifth elder's sword is gone, and the Jin Jiantian is not afraid of the wind blowing his tongue. When I heard this murmuring, I stopped straight away and did not step forward in. I held back the anger inside me, but reality always strikes so hard that I wasn't about to give into it. Send the demonic elixir to the third elder and say that the ninth sister's injuries are very urgent and that I'm asking him to refine the medicine to cure her injuries. Make sure all the passing disciples know that this is the demonic pill sent by the fifth elder. After all, I'm afraid he'll renege on his debt. The young disciple took out a small teacup and scooped out a little of immortal water from a large water tank on the side. Immediately after that, he handed it to the third elder across the table and very respectfully informed the third elder to please look at it. Mo Xingjian, the third elder of the sword sect, instantly cried without tears. It seemed that the demon pill at the peak of the spirit of transformation had failed as well. I wanted to take advantage of the power of the first grade pill of creation to become a first-grade alchemist, but apparently all failed. The youngest disciple said he was very puzzled. The demonic elixir of the god of transformation is just a gamble of luck, and the demonic elixir of the harmonious Tao can be a sure thing. I only saw the aura around Mo Xingjian appear at first glance. It was a harmonious demon pill, not a sugar bean. The young apprentice pointed to the back. Mo Xingjian tried his best to open his little pea eyes, but he couldn't think of a result in his mind. She shook the young disciple's shoulders frantically. How could she not know who did what and when? And the young disciple said he had just learned about it too. The third elder instantly opened the window of the room, wanting to go forward to check out the news of the harmonious demon pill. In the center of the courtyard there were countless silhouettes, and eagerly asked the men to perform the 5 elders. Brother Jin will of course meet their demands. Elder Su steps forward. Qingping's sword stuns the world, and the Hado demon witnesses the sword hard before him. At this time, the third elder was hiding behind the window and eavesdropping. This is the news of beheading a great demon of the harmonious Tao. They are really talking more and more. Outrageous. The disciple standing in the middle was still speaking impassionedly. Elder Su was holding the Qingping sword in his hand, based on heaven and earth, and only heard a broken cry. That big demon was scared out of its wits. The third elder couldn't hold back any longer and rushed out. His voice was full of disdain. It's just the god transformation stage. How to scare the guts of the harmonious Tao. The third elder flew over fiercely. His face dark and gloomy, ruthlessly gave the rumor-mongering disciple a slap and landed steadily on the ground. The tone of the majestic warning, presumptuous elders, to tell right and wrong, according to the law of the clan, can be expelled from the clan. I'm asking you, just said, is it true or false? At this time, some of the disciples who are not afraid of her authority, but also screamed there, the real cannot be false, cannot be true. She is very convinced that Elder Su, the disciple on the ground, is very afraid, but in his heart is unconvinced. Obviously everyone has said, but the third elder stared at him with a serious expression. The clan recently blew a wave of idol worship. All have no intention of cultivation. Biased, especially this Su Bei. As a sword clan elder, he was idle all day long, teasing cats and dogs. And now he was actually saying that he had captured the great demon of harmonization. It was really outrageous, and her tone of voice was full of disdain. Gnashing her teeth, she told the disciples that strength is the key in the immortal cultivation world. And how can the fifth elder brother convince the public when he is not doing his job? Third elder disdainfully reached out and pulled off the pictorial. It's been 100 years. As a sword sect elder, Her martial arts have not grown at all. She raised her foot high and kept stepping on the poster on the ground. Think before you speak, otherwise you will be like your elder Su. You really don't know the sky and the earth. Just at this moment Xiao Ruochang arrived, holding the harmonious demon peel in her arms. Ninth Master Uncle is seriously injured. Please ask Third Master Uncle to help refine the chi and blood grade. Xiao Ruochang walked towards the direction of the third elder, and naturally saw Su Bei's pictorial on the ground, which had already been stepped on and was dirty and filthy. The third elder looked at her and waved his hand in disdain and refused. Absolutely impossible. He wouldn't believe that it was the harmonious demon pill. Xiao Ruochang stretched out her hand and lifted the red silk cloth, revealing the glowing demonic elixir inside. Whether it's real or not, the third uncle would know at a glance. The third elder reached out and took it, her eyes widened in shock. Her voice was a bit unbelievable. Is this really from Su Bei? The other disciples were talking. It seems that what Zhang Jianting said was true. Elder Su fought with the demon at the bottom of the undestroyable cliff. The last sword killed the demonic beast, and at this time, Xiao Ruochang squatted on the ground to pick up her master's picture, lowered her head to the third elder, tone serious, said, Ninth uncle and the master was seriously injured. Without chi and blood, to restore the den is difficult to heal. Who killed the demon is very important. She raised her head and asked. Afterwards, she stood up again and said goodbye in an uncertain tone. Master and uncle still need to be taken care of. Ruochang will go first. Please leave the alchemy to me. The third elder frowns in place holding the demonic peels. The disciples behind him were talking. The fifth elder is very hard. In the end it is a big demon that has merged with the Tao. At this time, I was guarding the bedside of Shen Wulan, only to see that she was injured, and her tone of voice was still fierce as she asked, What are you looking at? I reached out and pulled her wrist, began to give her pulse. Some curiosity and doubt asked, Senior sister has always been so cold, an ice-cold nature. When Shen Wulan saw me so close, she couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. Her face blushed, and she bit her lips in embarrassment. As I was taking her pulse, I suddenly felt that her pulse was a bit disturbed. I felt strange, so I wondered if her injury had worsened again. Hearing me ask this question, Shen Wulan's cheeks turned red and she summoned up the courage. Just when she wanted to say something to me, the sound of eager running suddenly came from outside. It was the eighth elder. She pushed open the door and rushed in. She was very worried and shouted, Shen Wulan, how are you? Seeing someone in such a hurry, I coughed lightly to calm her down. My sister was just injured and her aura couldn't coalesce. There's no big problem. Elder 8 did not believe my words. Very anxious shout. How can it be fine? Is a hand dragged over the wrist of Shen Wulan. Begin to give her pulse diagnosis. This is not to diagnose the pulse, okay. A diagnosis of the pulse to scare her. This pulse is as fast as in the drum. Tone of panic. Action between accidentally touched me. I got up in a hurry to avoid it, only to see Elder 8 reaching out recklessly, pinching over Shen Wulan's face to look at her carefully, and her face was also very red. Shen Wulan hurriedly covered up, panicked and turned her back to explain that she was sunbathing in the sun, and Elder 8 touched his head. Feeling a little strange, I told her to relax. My sister's life is not in danger. Hearing this, Elder 8 was finally relieved, pulling me to go out. Shen Wulan was a little bit tasteless and pouted. The two of them were doing something behind their backs. And what about that night? How come she didn't know about it? Just as the eighth elder sister and I were about to step out of the door, the house suddenly came violent coughing. We heard the sound, quickly turned back to the head, hurriedly came to the bedside of Shen Wulan, only to see her cover her chest and keep coughing. I was a little worried in my heart. I thought, is not a secret injury? I stretched out my hand to take her pulse, but there was nothing unusual in her pulse, so I asked her with concern how she was feeling. Shen Wulan said that she was not seriously hurt, and pretended to be curious to ask, that you denied what? The eighth elder smiled and sat her on the bedside to explain to her. I saw this scene from the sidelines, touched my chin, thoughtfully guessed, Ninth sister, this is jealous. I have to test it. Immediately after, I quickly reached out my hand and affectionately scraped the tip of the eighth elder sister's nose. The eighth elder frowned violently, somewhat surprised. I am not sure what operation I am doing, so I asked suspiciously, what are you doing? I reminded in a calm tone, there are dirty things. Single Wulan instantly startled, sit up, not waiting to say something outside the door. Suddenly came a person happy shouting, Master, I'm back. Words just said. She saw the scene in front of her. The corners of her eyes flooded with tears. Sadly clenched fists. Chiner seems to come is not the time. sadly turned her head and palmed away. I was really powerless to spit out this cultivation plot. It was really bloody, but still got up and went, reached out to stop her, held her arm. You came at the right time. Not far away from the two of this are puzzled. I broke down in my heart and thought, this broken mouth of mine, how did I say it so smoothly? Xiao Ruochang clutched the pictorial in her hand tightly. Her eyes were tearful, muttering her mouth to spit out. Master so frivolous. Never again ignore the master. Said these words, turned around and violently opened the door. Flew away. I want to reach out to stop but cannot pull. I could only turn back, but I didn't forget to ask the 8th elder sister, please take care of Wulon. I have to go out now. Elder 8 assured me with a serious look. Don't worry, I'll take care of your sister. While Shen Wulon turned her head away unhappily, she snorted lightly, but she couldn't help but secretly rejoice behind her back, her face blushing a little as she thought, he called me Wulan. He has me in his heart. At this time, Xiao Ruochang flew to a forest. She couldn't control her anger, clenched her fists and ruthlessly smashed them on the trees. After a while, she stopped and lowered her head, grated her teeth and thought to herself, big devil, damn big devil. She actually destroyed the sisters with her hot hands. It's really detestable. Then she thought of something and quickly turned her head, her eyes staring fiercely at a place, the poster she brought back from the 3rd elder's side. What a waste of her own good intentions, and really believed that he would change his ways. I could no longer control the anger in my heart, raised my foot high, staring fiercely at Suzanne on the ground, cursing angrily in my mouth to hell. And at this time, I followed closely to chase her, constantly shouting, Disciple, where are you? Xiao Ruochang quickly turned her head, hiding in the dark, secretly observing me. The heart cannot help but be a little shocked. Even that the sisters do not want. This is still the devil. On this little trick of hiding, I quickly found her, quickly turned her head, and happily shouted at her, finally found you. I gently stretched my hand forward and looked at Xiao Ruochang with a smile, and kept coaxing her in a low voice, come back, I'll take you to eat candy canes. Okay. Xiao Ruochang heard this. Some sadness covered the mouth. Actually take themselves as a 3-year-old child. Master really in the previous life is not the same. I am trying to go forward. Unexpectedly saw the not far from the ground of the newspaper. Some curious to pick up. Mouth emotionally say, this painting, although the posture is rough, and by the shoe crane stained the face, but it is difficult to hide this person jade tree. Soft and elegant fluttering temperament. Xiao Ruochang looked at me with a speechless face, petrified in place. You must have seen that this is you. And then she lowered herself to her knees again. Tears could not stop running down her cheeks, sincerely admitting her faults. She should always embarrass her master. From now on, Chiner will never act recklessly again. I saw her so understanding appearance, generously forgave her, for the teacher is also the first time to be a master, and thoughtful to her over her body. I lie back to my own bedchamber. The girl's mind is really difficult to figure out. It will not grow into an unattainable look in the future. When Ren Pingxin did not know when to appear in the side, enchanting touched my cheeks, fiercely startled me a big jump. Senior sister went to come. I saw when Ren Pingxin suddenly leaned in close, reached out and clamped my chin. There was no more elder sister in my eyes. My cheeks couldn't help but turn red with shyness. Sister so atmospheric, one not to notice cannot be I hastily backward, and this time when Ren Pingxin suddenly opened his mouth to ask, I saw her straighten up her body posture enchanting, throwing winks at me. The tone of temptation, senior sister and your god sister, which looks good. So I tentatively reached out my hand, casually ruffled the hair on my cheeks. The plum must be less white than the snow, but the snow is less fragrant than the plum. But I didn't realize that in the next second, when Ren Pingxin stretched out her foot and stepped on my face, cursing me with her mouth. Only a few days to be dead, fish hook away soul. You still have the face to come back. In the Sword Clan 500 years, only to go to the Red Pavilion to stay for a few days. She saw that I was slow to speak, and actually still laughing. She could not help but be a little angry, holding her arms and staring at me furiously. But then want to ask the main thing. The opening ceremony of the Holy Land is only more than half a month left. Asked me if there are any good ideas. I said with a serious expression, now there is no shortage of funds. The idea of my younger brother only need to sister nod. It will be a great success. When Ren Pingxin some disbelief, I immediately anxious to explain. I Su Bei life of high morals. 500 years to keep his body like a jade. Dare to go through fire for the Sword Clan. Conscientious. When Ren Pingxin didn't believe in this nonsense anymore, and kicked me squarely in the face to stop me from talking nonsense again. I was warned that it would be better if I didn't think too much, and that the sword sect must not become a laughing stock. on your second sister's 800th birthday in a few days. There are many people who come and go. I quickly agreed, tightly hugged her thighs. The opening ceremony needs your support, huh? Please, sister. When men pinching posture relax sitting, sister of course can support you. But what is the price? Mentioning this, I am a little sad. Suddenly a thing flashed in my mind. Excited to open the mouth to full. Have long wanted to send your sister a unique trousers, but the business busy. Not waiting for me to finish my defense, when Ren Pingshin opened his mouth grimly. Is that the trousers that your disciple's sister, as well as that dead fish? All of. I heard the words described, shook his head, took out a pair of trousers, which is specially prepared for the senior sister of the length of the feet, and a unique logo. When Ren Pingshin see the situation tone only a little better, petulant cold grunt is still not wiping you, and then from gently took the trousers, turned to leave, suddenly threw me something. The big demon is not so good to deal with. In the future, let's show off, can run to run know it. Then she turned back to me and looked down at me with a soft smile. This can replenish your blood and chi, keep it for your body. And then she left. I was a little curious to open the box. I do not know what is inside the treasure. There is a red potion inside. I was a bit surprised. I recognize it. It was the first grade blood lotus pill prepared by my sister to restore my blood after breaking through the tribulation. When Ren Pingshin gently picked up a soup dumpling with her chopsticks, opened her mouth and took a bite, gently inhaling the soup inside. It was so delicious. She chewed on the contents of her mouth. Inwardly she couldn't help but sigh. The immortal peak stuffed Dunkin' dumplings were really delicious. But behind her there were many people clustered around. They all liked the stockings on her legs. She couldn't help but spit in her heart. This was specially provided for her by Su Bei. These people think quite beautifully. At this time, a group of female disciples suddenly rushed out in the same direction, and they all shouted in an adoring tone, "Elder Su, I'm coming." When Renping heart some doubt, so a hand pulled out a female disciple, asked the cause of the matter. The disciple excitedly pointed not far away. The fifth elder was going to choose a Dao couple, and every one of the female disciples would have a share. When she heard this, she could no longer maintain her smile, and her face instantly turned. She looked up. Not far away from the peak of the mountain was clearly affixed with a large long banner, Su Bei family's secret election. It was the female disciple who pointed her hand to the place where Min Pingshin could not maintain her calmness, and casually threw the plate in her hand. The plate instantly fell to the ground, splitting into pieces, and the soup dumplings became dirty as well. She quickly summoned the sword. The sword rushed towards the mountain peak, gnashing her teeth and shouting angrily, "Su Bei, what are you doing again?" At this time, I am sitting on the edge of the bed with a serious demeanor, carefully blowing the medicine in my hand. Shen Wulong was a bit puzzled to see just what to ask what this is doing. I reached out and put a spoonful of medicine, forcefully fed into her mouth. At once she frowned. Soon she frowned fiercely and covered her mouth. Pitifully spat out so bitter, I whispered to console. Good medicine is good for the disease. Right. Drink it to get well faster, and then scooped up a spoonful of it and handed it to her mouth. Open your mouth. I added honey in it. This medicine has a sweetness back. Shen Wulong looked down at the medicine. His weight slowly shifted, and he stared blankly at his hands. He stared at these hands, which were so long and beautiful that he couldn't take his eyes off them, and quickly ignored the existence of the medicine. I do not know what this is in 8 days, only to see her expression frowncy, so took the opportunity to put the medicine on the side of her mouth. The action of forceful pouring in, but because the action is too violent, finger accidentally by her bite. I cannot help but eat the pain hissed. Pain hissing, teeth cracked. I was a bit speechless looking at her, even delayed to let go of her mouth, so I had to whisper coaxing, "Good boy." Quickly let go of her mouth. Shen Wulong paused for a while, then gently loosened her lips, opened her mouth and spat out the medicine in her mouth, and let go of my hand. I looked at my fingertips in a bit of a daze, and I couldn't help but think to myself with some sweat, "Sister is really unpredictable," said Shen Wulong, sneaking a peek at him. Otherwise, he remembered that he still had one thing he wanted to say, so he looked serious and wanted to open his mouth to ask. I couldn't help but be a little puzzled. Casually pack up the medicine bowl, let her boldly say on the line, "There is nothing that cannot be said." Just when she wanted to open, the door suddenly came a roar of anger. "Su Bei, you and what the hell? Tell you two elders 800th birthday is coming. You're the whole of this moth." When Min Pingshin kicked open the door, the angry walked in. Again similar scene. Again was interrupted. I cannot help but feel a little speechless. She was still there with her waist spitting. Then she came forward, smilingly grabbed me by the ear, and reminded Shen Wulong to take a good rest. And when Lao San's first grade great restorative peel was completed. As soon as the words left her mouth, she grabbed me by the ear and dragged me fiercely towards the door, and I kept wailing about the pain. And the bed of Shem Wulong expression calm, slow and easy to drink a mouthful of medicine. After a careful taste, the heart sweet, indeed added honey. I was very attentive to the elder sister, constantly rubbing her shoulders. Sister do not know, the younger brother this shot can shock the 21 states. When Min Pingxin did not even look at the tone of disdain. Not shocked 21 states. The opening ceremony of the sword set, which is not shocking enough. You give me the whole this out. I keep whispering to please. Give elder sister shoulder rub. You this ghostly opening performance. Gave my younger brother endless inspiration. When Min Pingxin looked sideways with some curiosity, only to see me swinging my hands and reciting words, a dance unheard of by everyone. It was the Thousand Swords Guanyin, and soon I organized a Thousand Swords Guanyin selection competition, attracting a large number of female disciples to participate. The people below were ecstatic, constantly shouting in excitement to choose me. They spoke of their respective advantages and scrambled forward. I stood on the high platform, coughed lightly twice, and then announced with a serious look that this gathering of disciples of the sword sect was to select 100 female disciples, together with this elder, to participate in the opening ceremony of the Holy Land recruitment in a few days. The whole process is fair and open and impartial. Now the competition officially begins. A green-haired female disciple came forward. She has a pair of slender legs. Just reported the name. Staring at her legs could not help but praise. Good name. The next disciple stared at her with glowing eyes and praised her. A person with a broad mind and a pure heart. A female disciple showed off her soft body. She has been practicing soft body work since she was young. She can unlock hundreds of poses. She was also successfully selected. I was happy in my heart. There are a dozen good candidates at once. It is really pleasing to the eye. Just want to call out the next, but suddenly found that not far away, there are 2 disciples dressed in handyman clothes, are standing with their backs to themselves. Naturally, the disciples on the other side also noticed their strange attire and said in a disdainful tone, "We're serious disciples, so you're not worthy of a piece of the pie." The rough-looking female servant clenched her fists. She angrily yelled back, "We are not also the sword clan," when someone stopped her, and the sword lady on the side rushed her to compare sign language. "Let's go back. It turns out that she can't speak. Is a mute?" Her friend whispered to persuade the sword lady, pulling her hand. Couldn't help but sigh. "Why don't you try? Obviously can do it. Just walked off the stage." I heard the 2 of them talking to each other. Seeing that they were about to leave, I hurriedly opened my mouth to stop them. "Why are you leaving?" The 2 of them turned their heads in shock, and the servant disciple anxiously took the woman's hand and nervously introduced me to her. "This is the sword maiden. She can speak." Then gently pushed the sword lady's shoulder, pushed the person to come to me. The handyman disciple magnanimously rushed to introduce himself. "I hope that her friend will be selected. Jian Yong is very nice. She is also very beautiful, and every day not only practice, but also wash swords in the sword washing pool." Hearing these words, I couldn't help but be a bit surprised. Slightly widening my eyes, looking down at the sword lady, I reached out my hand and gently pulled it over the sword lady's hand with a very careful movement. In a kind and gentle tone, she asked in a low voice, "Is your name Jian Yong?" Her friend asked anxiously from the sidelines if Jian Yong was allowed to enter the competition. I repeated her words, my face sullen, making it impossible to see what I was thinking about. After a while, I took her hands and announced to the crowd that miscellaneous disciples are naturally also sword sect disciples. Then invited the sword lady to ask if she. Then I invited Jian Yong and asked her if she would like to join me in the opening ceremony. Jian Yong gestured with her sign language and said with some self-consciousness that she couldn't speak. Her friend couldn't help but cry a little sadly. The sword lady worked so hard. Even if she washed her sword until very late every day, she must practice. I have not said anything, just nodded lightly, then pulled the sword lady's wrist, leading her towards the high stage, then announced in a loud voice, "The talent, status, and strength are the only truths in this world, but the cornerstone of the great hall is not higher than the lowest cornerstone there." I raised the wrists of both of them high. Here, whether it is a journeyman disciple, an inner disciple, or even a pro-disciple, the sword sect will tolerate all sword sect disciples. The sword sect will treat them equally, and will not look down on any disciple, no matter what his status is. When Jian Yong heard these words of his, she twisted her head in some shock. Her heart was so shaken that she couldn't help but cry at the corners of her eyes. And not far away, when Ren Pingqing and Xiao Ruochang happened to be mixed in the group of disciples, naturally also heard my words. Eldest sister could not help but feel a bit relieved. Originally thought it was just a farcical princess election. She did not expect me to be able to say something like this. Among the disciples on the stage, 2 of them suddenly bent down and knelt down, and the disciples on the sidelines were talking a lot. Hua Xiaotao is young and talented, and that Yi Xiaoyu, what a good girl, in order to save the companion's cultivation lost, and also disfigured. What a pity. The other disciples who didn't dare to come forward kneeled down in unison. Their destinies were different, but they had the same hard life. I couldn't help but feel some emotion in my heart. This might be the Thousand Sword Goddess. This is destined to be their sage. Only in this way will they be able to fulfill each other. So I kneeled down in front of Vishayu and saw that she looked a little nervous and slightly raised her head to look at herself. I smiled softly and gently. The gentleman reached out his hand to her and asked cordially, "Are you willing to participate in the opening ceremony with this elder?" Just saw those kneeling on the ground female disciples action neatly to their own kowtow ahead and constantly shouted willingly. I am the 5th elder of the sword sect, and now I am kneeling on the ground, patting the fertile soil in front of me. I looked seriously. I planted a small peach tree. Behind me, Xiao Ruochang was a little surprised. Now planting a tree is not too late. Then I stood up and replied, the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. As soon as my words fell, the onward peak made a loud sound. Xiao Ruochang looked at this scene and shouted in surprise, Master, the volcano is about to erupt. I smiled and twisted my head to look at her, feeling helpless at her out-of-tune words. The sword sect doesn't have Mount Fuji. How could it erupt? Soon I looked at the direction of Xiao Ruochang's finger. My eyes widened in surprise. How could it say eruption? At this time, the 3rd elder's voice came from the sword sect and laughed loudly. I have finally finished. I am a 1st-grade alchemist. Hearing these words, I was also excited. 3rd elder brother has succeeded. It seems that Wulong will soon be able to get better. Xiao Ruochang looked at her master's back. Her heart was amazed. The relationship between her master and the 9th uncle. Are they already so close? Soon the 3rd elder jumped down from the mountain and came towards us. My brother succeeded. Thanks to your river demon pill, the 3rd elder landed firmly on the ground, blocking the way of Xiao Ruochang and me. When she stood up and held her glasses, these red ones are the 1st-grade pills of creation. Just one of them will make you a great emperor. She handed me the pill of creation in her hand. This is the formula of the Mo family, which has not been disseminated for thousands of years. From now on, it will be offered to dreaming for free. I looked at the 3rd elder's hands, of the 1st grade, of the Great Restoration Dan. Felt very surprised. Dared to ask the senior brother the research of this Dan's ancestor's last name and name. When I heard the name muttered by the 3rd elder, I hurriedly took the elixir in his hand. So it was Mo Wei Chao. Out of respect. Out of respect. Afterwards, I picked one up and put it on the tip of my nose and sniffed it. And just by sniffing it, I felt that my body was flowing smoothly. I was a little ashamed of myself. This is worthy of being a 1st-grade elixir that can cause a bloody storm. Xiao Ruochang, who was behind me, also coveted this elixir. Just as I walked some distance away and threw an elixir toward Xiao Ruochang behind me, the 3rd elder reminded me that the elixir should be stored properly. The 3rd elder turned her head to look at me when she finished speaking, but I ignored her and turned to remind Xiao Ruochang to take the potion to cleanse her marrow. She followed up by saying, this kind of elixir has a considerable effect, even on the harmonization realm. You let Xiao Ruochang take it, there won't be any problems. Right. The 3rd elder at this moment waved his hand towards me. This pill can also raise the upper limit of cultivation, talent, physique and so on. I directly instructed Xiao Ruochang, only seriously and carefully, are not spicy to absorb it to be considered worthy of this pill. Xiao Ruochang looked at the elixir in her hand. Her heart was a little puzzled. This even I can take the elixir that can change the fate of heaven. I just gave it to her. At this time Xiao Ruochang has not regained her senses. She has never thought that she is so important in my heart. Xiao Ruochang excitedly knelt down in front of me and seriously thanked me and my 3rd senior brother, but her face was a little red. Master, you have done too much for me. I am not worthy of this elixir. After I heard these words, I put on a cool face and coughed lightly, then turned away from looking at Xiao Ruochang. 3rd elder's glance gave us space. Dansha Peak still has things to do, so I won't bother you guys anymore. After the 3rd elder flew away, I turned my head to see Xiao Ruochang put the elixir on a flower. I somewhat do not understand her approach. I turned around and was about to leave my disciple, so I hurriedly took out the potion from the stamen and chased after her. At this moment, I had already caught up with her and reached out to slap her on the shoulder. I was confused by Xiao Ruochang's approach. When I asked her to cultivate, she was the most active. Now that I asked her to open up, she refused. When Shen Wulong came to my room, I was holding the red belly band in my hand. The atmosphere was very awkward. Things are not what you think they are. Shen Wulong's face was grim as she said to me, "Sister is just here to thank senior brother for the chi and blood pills. Other than that, it's none of sister's business." I hurriedly threw the bib in my hand into the pool, but my ninth sister turned around and left in anger. Seeing that Shen Wulong was about to go out the door, I immediately stood up and explained to her that the bib was given to me by Miss Mo. The atmosphere eased off. I went up to Wulong and dragged her by the arm. Miss Mo asked me to look at it alone. "I didn't mean that." Without saying a word, Wulong shrugged off my hand and said, "This has nothing to do with my sister." I sat her down on the ground. Looking at her back, she did not have a trace of attachment, walked straight out, and did not listen to any of my explanations. Just as I got up to pick up the bib, the eighth sister ran in. At this time I was still there humming. Did not notice her. She pushed me away and picked up a ladle to scoop up the water in the tank. Her eyes never resting on me, she took the dipper and gulped down the water. How it looked like she hadn't drank water in 800 years. I was really interested in her. After drinking a whole dipper of water, she was finally satisfied, wiping the water stains at the corner of her mouth and asking me if I had seen her sister. When I heard that the eighth sister was looking for Shen Wulong, my face was a bit embarrassed, and I helplessly told her the whole story. Hearing this, the eighth senior sister was a bit surprised. Then she used her hand to fan the wind, spitting out my house. "How can you be so hot at night in an empty and deserted place?" Xiao Ruochang used her spell. Every time she took a step, flower imprints would appear on the ground. He looked at the imprints under his feet. His heart was thrilled. A half-step Jin Dong at the age of 18 was enough to laugh at the 21st date. This was thanks to what her master had done to her. She suddenly drew a long sword from behind her. Xiao Ruochang took the long sword and used the second style on the sword manual. Only at first sight, splash accompanied by her half-step Jin Dong, which was extremely powerful. Suddenly she didn't stand still and fell on the ground. The mark on the ground also slowly dissipated. She violently slammed her fist on the ground. Her face was very gloomy. It was just that close. It seems she hasn't got the hang of sword to yet. Outside my room, there was the voice of the eighth senior sister, a voice that was so annoying that it made it impossible to sleep. I hugged eighth senior sister and felt that her body was very hot. I was puzzled in my mind. How could a cultivator have a fever? The eighth senior sister was squirming in my arms. Her face was flushed red and she was hugging me tightly. This position of hers left me at a loss of what to do. Suddenly I was jumped on the bed by the eighth sister. At this moment I feel that the big thing is not good. I have to think of a way to get out in a hurry. When I was in a daze, the eighth sister leaned over and pressed down, and her face revealed an abnormal red color, as if she was poisoned. The sword at my waist touched her knee as she pressed down on me. She reminded me to move the scabbard of my sword. I couldn't move at all when I was pressed down, so she helped me to remove the sword from my waist. But the expression on her face was indescribable. Am I going to die here today? I couldn't believe it. Seeing the eighth sister approaching me, she came up and without saying a word, she was about to tear off my clothes. I reached out and hurriedly pulled down the curtains. At that moment, Xiao Ruochang pushed the door and came in, wanting to ask me for advice on her cultivation problems. But she didn't realize that there was an eighth sister in my room. She hurriedly opened her mouth and left first. It's not the right time for me to come. As if I saw the straw that saved my life, I struggled to reach out to stop her. You came at the right time. Quickly help me to help my teacher. Seeing that the eighth sister was about to kiss me, I shouted at Xiao Ruochang, "Don't just stand there. Quickly help me to hold your uncle down." In the tree outside the house, two birds were having an affair. Xiao Ruochang and I tied up the eighth sister. I don't know what happened. The eighth sister suddenly became like this. The drug in her body hadn't gone down yet, and she was still squirming, wanting me to hug her. At this time, I waved my hand. I don't know how to explain this kind of behavior of the eighth sister. What exactly is happening to her? I was shocked to look down at my own palm, and actually do not know when stained with some water stains. Actually so long have not been dry. Xiao Ruochang turned her head to look at me. She felt very puzzled. I was still talking about the problem of the bibs in that shocking manner. Xiao Ruochang, who heard the word bib, instantly erupted. I helplessly coughed lightly and urged her not to care about those details. I turned my head. My face was a little shy. Now the key task is to think how to solve your eighth uncle's problem, Xiao Ruochang shouted in a low voice. The eighth uncle. But she did not move. She kept tearing the clothes on her legs. I sighed helplessly, so Xiao Ruochang immediately covered my eyes, shouting, "Senior, you don't not allowed to see." But behind her, the eighth senior sister broke free. Eighth master leapt up and directly pounced towards me. Xiao Ruochang and I looked over at the same time and were really surprised. She used a spell to throw Xiao Ruochang, who was in front of me, out of the way. Xiao Ruochang directly hit the wall with a loud bang, while I was thrown to the ground by my eighth senior sister. When my disciple Xiao Ruochang saw this scene, her eyes widened in disbelief that I had been molested by the eighth senior sister, just like that I was robbed of my first kiss by my eighth senior sister. Xiao Ruochang, who was on the side, felt a great deal of resentment in her heart. Why should it be the two of them? It was like my soul was taken away. My brain was out of control. I let the eighth sister manipulate me as she pleased. The eighth senior sister just pressed down and kept kissing me. I felt like I was about to suffocate at this point. I fought hard to resist, but still did not get the eighth sister away. I can only sit up first to see the opportunity to act. At this time, their lips slowly pulled apart. The eighth sister absorbed the true chi in my body. Suddenly, the eighth sister left my body. He put the body of the poisonous gas, a brain all out. I slowly stood up, looked at the eighth sister collapsed on the ground. Really sad, speechless. She just almost did not suffocate me. After this fierce fight, I explained to Xiao Ruochang inside the house that I really couldn't blame Master. Xiao Ruochang refused to listen to my explanation and said she knew everything. Looking at my disciple who was ignoring me, I awkwardly touched the back of my neck. Before I said I wasn't angry, but now I'm doing what? What? Xiao Ruochang shyly opened her mouth. You are very good to Qiner, but whenever I see Master having intimate acts with other women, I am always unhappy in my heart. So I took Xiao Ruochang's hand, intending to take her out for a walk to disperse her mind. Lying on the bed, eighth elder has been pretending to be asleep. With a shy look on his face, he actually kissed his elder brother, but it seems that his younger sister likes his elder brother as well. The eighth elder is still thinking that if she is really pregnant, the baby will have to call her elder brother father. I looked at Xiao Ruochang walking in front of me. If you must be angry, or angry for that teacher's good, and also good for physical and mental health. At this time we Saturday on the ground, looking at the bright moon in the sky. What night without the moon, where there is no tree, but fewer people such as no to years. Hiding behind a tree, Shen Wulan saw this scene and was saddened by it. The tree planted by his brother was not just for her. Shen Wulan silently hid behind the tree. His heart has been torn. Brother did so naturally have other hidden reasons. I should not blame him. The next morning, a woman in red wrote a letter congratulating Sai Qingyi on his 800th birthday. It turned out that this woman in bright red clothes is the Sword Clan's second elder. I did not expect her who haunts on his back. She was singing loudly with a microphone when the guards suddenly came behind her. Second elder, a letter from the Mo family. Sai Qingyi took the letter from the guard and opened it. The content of the letter is that Mo Lidal is going to join the sword sect, and the second elder intends to add to the Mo family's family name. She suddenly noticed me behind her and turned her head in horror, cursing in her heart that I had caused her to lose face. Sai Qingyi looked at Xiao Ruochang beside me. She couldn't believe that Xiao Ruochang had achieved the half-step refining market. Xiao Ruochang walked with me in the courtyard. Looking at the servants who were busy cleaning the courtyard, I reminded Xiao Ruochang that no matter who comes, they are not allowed to compete on the stage. Got it? Xiao Ruochang was very surprised. I patiently explained to her, traces of light Taobao, 21 weeks win the competition, and then give them a Sword Clan shock. At this moment, the disciples were beating the drums, and the sound of the drums was very shocking. Another disciple was hosting the ceremony on the stage, the 800th birthday celebration of the second elder of the sword sect. Sai Qingyi had officially begun. There were so many people coming to the ceremony. The Mo family from the Eastwind Ancient Kingdom also came to the ceremony. The next person to appear is the Star and Moon Sect's head, Fish Red Sleeve. He came to my side and flirted with me. It seems that my brother is doing well in Jinzhong, with such a beloved disciple by his side. Suddenly, a voice interrupted their conversation. You slutty fox, why are you so cheap? Fish Patriarch twisted his head to look over, found that behind them is actually the Sword Clan eldest elder. The two of them were arguing with each other, and I was very small behind them. I wanted to stop them, but I didn't dare to make a sound. Immediately after, the elders of all the major clans arrived. Everyone was warmly welcoming them, just as Patriarch Fish and the great elders were not happy. Empress Lin of the Eastern Wind Ancient Kingdom's royal family arrived as well. The next to arrive at the ceremony was Li Zijuin, the daughter of the South Wind Ancient Kingdom's Rushan. I turned my head to look at the shocked Xiao Ruochang and asked her if she had heard of this Li Zijuin. Xiao Ruochang waved her hand. Rumor has it that she is the daughter of the Confucian sage Li Zhou. This is the first time I have seen her. I looked at the enchanting Li Zijuin, with her enchanting figure and cool temperament inside. She simply read. It would be great if she was my disciple. Li Zijuin and I were walking in different directions. The second sister's birthday was about to start. If we were late, we could only sit at the children's table. Suddenly, Li Zijuin turned her head to look at me, but I didn't notice her gaze at all. The corners of her mouth rose slightly as she stared in the direction I had left, and in her heart she sighed with emotion. Master, we meet again. The second elder, Sai Qingyi, walked onto the stage, holding a microphone and speaking passionately. Sai Mo's 800th birthday banquet is welcome. All of you come to watch. In her passionate and generous words, finally came to an end. All of you to drink, not drunk and not return. I looked at the table full of guests. It was very lively, some of them chatting, some of them drank a lot of wine. A man grimly picked up his chopsticks and looked over towards me. You broke our face that day. You can't have a good time today. The elders of the Mo family toasted to the second elder, wishing her every year and every day. As the second elder passed by each table, someone got up and made a toast to her, all for the sake of a good fortune. Someone put to help the second elder, pouring the wine to fill up the whole glass. Without saying a word, she drank the whole glass in one gulp. At this time, the second elder was already drunk. This man talked about the past, said that they had been in prison together. Friendship. The man put his arm around the second elder's shoulder, took his wine pot and poured it into the second elder. The second elder was being poured with wine, slurring his words, saying that there was no match yet. But the disciples shouted, "Pass on the words of Elder Sai. The match will begin." Afterwards, someone held a sword and beat the drum behind him. He stood on the stage and introduced himself as Wu Shichuan of the Yin Yang sect. At the early stage of Jing Dawn, please teach him. Just as he was listening to the murmurs from the stage, a man behind him jumped onto the stage. Like Wu Shichuan, he bowed and also declared his family name. Northwind Sex Lin Broshan, early Jing Dawn stage. Please teach him. The host of the stage held the microphone and shouted, "Now announce the start of the competition." The woman who ate at the same table as the eldest elder asked the eldest elder about me. "When man elder? Is there an elder surnamed Su in your clan?" Lin Jinyu lifted her cup of tea. "I heard that this person is a top choice in terms of talent and cultivation, and even wears the sword Sek's most precious treasure, the Qingping sword." Not far away, a man with a glass of wine in his hand let out a laugh as he watched the sword Sek's grand elder and Lin Jinyu. He slowly walked up and respectfully said, "Empress Lin is talking about Su Bei from the sword sect, right? Talent is indeed a bit strong, but the cultivation is not as good." Hearing these words, the grand elder's face sank and she glared at him sinisterly. She then waved her hand and explained to Lin Jinyu that the sword sect did indeed have Su Bei, who is ranked 5th amongst the elders. Seeing Empress Lin inquiring about my whereabouts, the grand elder pointed in my direction. My eyes weren't on Empress Lin at all. I was pointing the direction to Xiao Ruochang all the time. Empress Lin's face was a bit ugly. Looking at the plain and unimpressive me, she was puzzled in her mind. How could I be so popular with the emperor? Then I handed Xiao Ruochang the chicken leg in my hand. "Try this chicken leg. It smells great." I was carefully watching the match on the stage and asked the person beside me, "Apprentice, guess who will win between the two of them?" Xiao Ruochang is watching carefully. Lin Bishan is attacking fiercely, but Wu Shichuan is defending with ease. I guess Wu Shichuan will win. As soon as the words came out of my mouth, Wu Shichuan knocked down Lin Budian. This match is won by Wu Shichuan. I looked at the excited Xiao Ruochang and sighed in my heart. She is worthy of being in an 8 Taoist body. She can really see things thoroughly. Wu Shichuan beat the drum behind him again and shouted confidently, "Who else?" Just when he was getting carried away, a person flew over from behind him. He then introduced himself as Su Bei defeat of the sword sect, here to ask for a lesson. As I was watching the martial arts arena carefully, a woman's voice suddenly came from behind me. "Elder Su, it's been a long time since I saw you in Moshan." At that time, my face was ugly. Turned my head to look at the woman behind me, helplessly said, as if only a few days to see, "I really don't want to take care of this ancestor. I really don't know what she wants to do. Looking at her fiddling with her hair, it makes me a little uncomfortable."